I just got the Garmin GPSMAP 67i. It's in this box. I ordered it yesterday, the day that it came out. This video is in no way affiliated with Garmin or sponsored by Garmin. They did not provide me any tester units or any kind of help with this review. This is purchased with my own money with help from supporters like you. So thank you to all these supporters who make this possible. But anyway, you can see it's still in the box. I just got it. What I'm going to do in this video is we will unbox it. We'll set it up. We'll create a course. We'll go out for a hike with it. And we'll test some of the inReach functionality so you can see, if you're considering buying it, what it's all about initially. I'll also take the 66i out, which this is an incremental, I'd say, upgrade from that. But we'll take the 66i out as well, record the hike, and see how the GPX tracks, the GPS files compare. And also we'll see what the battery life looks like. I'm not sure if I can get any drain on this because the battery life is much longer, but we'll see. And I'll also have a more comprehensive review in probably a few weeks. I'll take this out on all my hikes and let you know what it's all about, recommend it or not recommend it in that video. So if that's something you're interested in, please subscribe and hit the like button so I know that there's an interest. And if you have any questions about this unit, leave them in the comments on this video and I'll do my best to answer them in the next video. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, as I unbox this, there's a couple features I'm looking for in the 67. It's a longer battery life, the multi-band GPS, GNSS systems, and a USB-C port. Now, I also picked up an Epix SE, which I'll be testing. So if that interests you, stay tuned for that. And here is the 67. Looks pretty standard Garmin. So opening up the box here, it's a couple of manuals, and then on the inside we have this cardboard with, on the one side, a USB-A to USB-C cable, a spine with a carabiner, and then the unit, which physically is exactly the same as a 66i. I looked at the specs, same weight, same screen resolution, everything is the same. Then on the back, instead of a micro USB on the 66, you have the USB-C here, so that all checks out, looks good. All right, it came with some battery charge, so I powered it up, and about the same boot up time as the 66, maybe a little quicker. We're going to do English, and we're going to activate it. You can use all the navigation functions without inReach, without activating it, so just know that you can do that. And when I chose to activate it, it's asking me now to load the Messenger app, not the Explorer app, but the Messenger app. Now, this is where it started to get confusing because I already had my Mini 2 paired with the Messenger app, and there was no option to add another device or to switch devices, so I had to remove the Mini 2 to add the 67i. If you don't have an inReach account, the Messenger app will prompt you to start an account and everything, but if you're upgrading from another device, you have to remove the old device and then pair the 67i. This is kind of typical of the Garmin setup, usually kind of clunky. And again, I wish they would, after all these years, maybe make this a little bit more intuitive. Once I got that sorted out, the Messenger app transferred service, and it was pretty easy switching up to the new device. And then I just had to activate it. When you activate your 67i, you're going to want a clear view of the sky. So if I took it outside and activated immediately, and then it was all set to go. Once the device was activated, the Messenger app started updating the firmware on the 67i, which is something you should always do for almost any device you get. But kudos to the Messenger app for doing that immediately, because that's probably the most important thing that you can do. The firmware activation just took a minute or two, and once it was all done, it rebooted a couple times, and we're all good to go. Because the Garmin ecosystem of apps is so crazy, the next thing I had to do was pair it with Garmin Explore, which is the app you need if you want to access the maps and the tracks and the courses, because we're going to put a course on this. So just because it's in Messenger doesn't mean it's in Explore, so I went ahead and added it to Explore, and then just ensured that it was syncing all of the collections and activities so that I can get all my navigation data from the phone into the 67i. I used the Garmin Explore app to create a new course, and I did this course through some tall office buildings and other challenging environments for the GPS to see if the multiband comes through. We'll call the course 67 Test, and that's what should show up on the unit once we sync this over to the unit. After that, I just synced my phone with the 67i and went down to the course planner on the 67i and click on that. And there it is, 67 Test. It's synced over, so that course should be all ready to go. We should be able to go outside and navigate with it. Next, I went to the Garmin Connect IQ app because I wanted to download a third-party app to test the battery. And I wasn't able to sync it with the 67i, so I went into the Connect app, which is another app that they use like for the Epix and Phoenix. And from there, I was able to start syncing a device or attempt to connect it just like I would my 66. But the 67 was not in the supported device list yet. So shame on Garmin for releasing a top-of-the-line handheld GPS and not offering support for it yet in their software. Hopefully this will get resolved, but I wasn't able to download any apps from the Connect IQ store. All right, here I am in the heart of suburbia. I'm going to walk through these tall buildings behind me because generally that's a tough place for a GPS to function. I have gotten signal dropout before there when I've tested other units, including multiband. So we'll test the 67i and the 66i. We'll record the tracks for both of them. And I'll use the 67i. I'll use that course to navigate me through this area. And we'll see what happens. We'll also test out some of the in-reach features as we go. So let's start walking. All right, here we go. I'm going to let them sit for a little bit just to soak, let the GPS soak, let it acquire some signals and get a good fix, and then we'll start the hike. Also worth noting, I have this on multi-GNSS and multi-band, and for the 66, I have it on GPS and Galileo with WAS and EGNOS turned on. All right, here we are. I have pretty good satellite signals, satellite fixes. You can see here on the GPSMAP 66, I'm actually down to 8 feet of accuracy and 9 feet on the 67, which is interesting. And for altitude, I've got 230 on the 67, and we've got 215 on the 66. So both very, very respectable. We're going to start the course now in a second. I'm going to start the 66 activity and record it, but here's where we're going to walk through. We're going to walk through these buildings here. Some of these tall buildings we're going to walk through, and that should challenge the GPS. It usually challenges them when I've done this before. Also compare it to my Epix 2 and iPhone 14 too, because why not? All right, here I am on the 67. Let's go ahead into the course planner. Let's find our course 67 test. There it is. There we are. Let's go ahead and hit start. And there you can see the purple line. We're a little bit off it because it routed us on a road. I'm going to walk on the sidewalk here. But you can see there it is. And let's go ahead and go to the recording controls and see if they've started. Okay, that started automatically to record our activity. Now everything else so far on this is exactly the way every other GPS 66 worked. If I go to the map, there we are on the map. I can zoom in and out. But there's the purple line. We're going to modify that a little bit so that we don't go in the street. Trip computer or compass should be pointing me. It's pointing me down there because that's where it wants me to walk. But we'll tune in with that again. But everything so far feels exactly like the 66. Not much different so far. All right, so here we are. We're entering a tougher area. I've got some tall buildings around us here. And it's doing good. It's doing really well. It shows me in the right place. And I've got this whole side of me blocked here, and it's doing good. Maybe this is a good time to test out sending a message on InReach. Let's go to messages. Let's send a check-in. Tell my wife I'm at the mall and I'm doing okay. All right, it's checking. This is all the same, and the InReach technology, I'm 99% sure is exactly the same as it is on the 66. We're basically limited by or throttled by the Iridium network and the, I think it's called short burst data system that this uses, which they all use until something like Starlink comes out and has higher speed data. This is what it's all going to be, I think, for everything on Iridium. But anyway, this is working. Let's let this do its thing, and I'll keep on hiking, walking. Now, one of the things that's interesting, you can see here I passed this point of the course, which was over there, in that little cul-de-sac, and I didn't do it. It didn't give me any kind of alert. So by default, these courses, oh, there's the message just went. That wasn't bad, about a minute, 2 minutes, maybe. But anyway, by default, there's no no notification when I go off course. So I could just be walking, you know, off into the wilderness, nowhere near my course. And if I'm not looking at the map, I don't know that. But there are some settings. Let's fool around with it and see if we can get it to tell us when we leave the course. All right, there's two options that we're going to set for courses. We're going to go to routing. This is in the setup menu. Course alerts, let's turn them on. And let's go to the obscure menu, which you would never think of, marine chart, no. Alarm setup, off course alarm. And let's set that up for when we are, let's make it 0.1 mile off course. All right, there we go, done. All right, so that's on. Let's see if we get any alarms as we do this. All right, as we're in the shadow of these tall buildings, let's see if we can get a weather report here. Let's go to InReach Weather, new forecast, basic, my location, get forecast. All right, so that's sending. It is now 2:22. Let's see how long it takes to get this back. All right, 1 minute, we got it back. Got it back in 1 minute. Not too bad. Not too bad. Basically, probably as good as InReach is gonna get. Which isn't bad at all. While I'm standing here, I just saw a really cool place to try out the multiband. So let me walk down here and we'll take a look at what this looks like on the GPS track, see if anyone can track us in this little alleyway through the buildings here. And we'll also see if I get an off-course alarm on the device. Let's see what happens here, because we'll be going off course. Of course we're off course. Here we go. Off course. Also, just worth noting that marine alarm does work when you're navigating with tracks. And in the full review, I'll just give you some tips on how to use this. Oh, there we go. Off course. Maybe it just stuttered in that extreme environment back there, but we have an off course alert, so that's cool. At least that worked. It does work with tracks as well. That's where I knew it from. But let's keep walking and wrap it up and see what happens on the tracks. All right, here we are back at the start. Let's go ahead and stop this navigation and let's go to menu and make sure our recording is stopped. No, let's do this. Save it. It's definitely a little bit quicker. I mean, that wasn't a long recording, but that definitely seems a little bit quicker than the 66. But anyway, let's stop everything else and look at it in the computer. All right, so I just got all the tracks into CalTopo. I'll put a link to this map so you can check it out yourself underneath the video. 66i is red, 67 is purple, Epix light blue, and iPhone is green. Let's go down to the start here. And you can see right away the 66i is having a hard time here. And we're walking by some tall buildings that are right here, and it's having a hard time, whereas the multiband devices, which is the 67, the Epix, and the iPhone 14, are all pretty much the same. Same thing, we come around this corner where there's some more tall buildings. The 66 really loses it right here. And when you have tall buildings like this, or canyons or canyon walls, this is a classic area where multibands will do better. And that's because the device is actually rejecting signals that have timing issues, which means they're bouncing off of walls and the timing is off on the signal. The 66i cannot do that, whereas these multiband devices can do that. And you can see they're doing just great here right along these buildings, these tall buildings. This is that alley I went through. 66i is definitely respectable there. It seems like it's struggling more when we have these really tall buildings, you know, a couple hundred feet. And then for the rest of it, you could see in general, all the multiband devices are hugging the path pretty closely, whereas the 66i has these places where it drops out and drifts off. But overall, I'd say the multiband on the 67 is 67i is better than the 66i, and it's comparable to what you get on an Epix or an iPhone or probably any other multiband device that's fairly modern. First impressions, it's almost exactly like a 66i. If you picked both of them up and you didn't really look at the labels or didn't know which one was which, you'd have a hard time telling that this was a 67 and not a 66. The form factor, the weight, the screen, the pixel resolution, all of that stuff is exactly the same as the 66. The things that are different, it's a little bit quicker. I could tell there's a little speed increase there. The multi-band GNSS is definitely better on this than the 66i. The battery, I wish I could have told you a little bit more on this first thing, and shame on Garmin for not having a battery percentage in this device. It's been years that these 60 series devices have been out, and when they used to have AA batteries and that you put in there, there was no battery percentage. But since they have internal batteries now, for several years, they could have put a battery percentage. There's third-party widgets that do it, and you have to get a third-party widget. So shame on Garmin for not doing that. That's really not acceptable. Same with the hiccups when I was updating it and getting it all set up. It's really should have been worked out, given that this is essentially the same as a 66. That said, Garmin is very good about updating the firmware and coming up with releases and handling bugs and all of that. So hopefully that will be addressed. And again, I will do a full review in the next few weeks. I'll do recommendations. I will do a how-to guide, and I'll give you my my feedback on the performance and whether it's worth upgrading or not. Off the top of my head, I'd say if you have a 66i, don't get a 67i unless you have an explicit need for that extra battery life or the multiband GNSS. Otherwise, I think you can hang on to the 66i. If you have an Explorer and you want to upgrade, I would only do it if you really need the navigation functions. Navigation is definitely better on a 6 series because you can navigate by track, route, and course, whereas the Explorer is only straight line. So if you're thinking about upgrading, the 67 is probably a decent deal. But again, stay tuned, stick around for a couple weeks. I'll have a much more comprehensive review. And if you have any questions for that, please leave them in the comments, and I will do my best to test it out and answer it and address whatever you guys are wondering about. All right, folks, thank you so much, and I will see you out in the trails.